I'm Aaron Baker from PhoneDog.com, and it's part 2 of the LG Nexus 5 or Google Nexus 5, depending on how you want to say it, full video review. We'll take a look and see what the software does, how KitKat stacks up, and if it's worth buying through Google or through a carrier store when it's available. We'll find out that and more in part 2 of the Nexus 5 video review, which starts right now. It's part 2 of the full video review of the LG Nexus 5 or Google Nexus 5, depending on how you want to brand this device. In any case, it's a high-end Android phone for under $350 unlocked, making it a great value not only for developers, not only for tech enthusiasts, but also for those people that are looking for a device, don't want to spend too much money, they want something unlocked. It's a great phone rather all around, and it competes definitely in a lot of high-end areas with the Galaxy S4, the Note 3, the HTC One, the One Max, the G2, the litany of other high-end Android devices on the market. In part 2, we'll talk more about the software and what distinguishes this device for good and for bad against other high-end devices on the market. But before we get too far into part 2 of the video review, I want to thank our partners at Best Buy Mobile. They give us phones like the Nexus 5 for use in our One Paw Bandit free giveaway game that happens at PhoneDog.com. When you go into Best Buy Mobile, rather, to get your Nexus 5, be it at Sprint, Verizon, or for example, you can't get it at Verizon, but let's say you could, Sprint, AT&T, T-Mobile, you'll walk out working and they'll walk out with unbiased advice. As part of their unbiased advice program, you walk in, they're not paid on commission or spiffs. They'll make sure you get what's best for you in your particular market. So let's talk Nexus 5 here and continue our discussion on Android 4.4 KitKat in the vanilla version at that. So obviously, we talked about this in part 1. Go back and take a look at that. But you can see KitKat here, very different from other Android versions. We see some updates both in the applications area and the application look and feel, in the overall notifications area and more. And one of those obviously is when you click on the apps here and you see the applications. Very similar to something you would see maybe from an Oppo or a Huawei in terms of their user interface. Very similar there. No direct widget shortcut here, like I said in part 1 either. And one of the things I found particularly interesting is the ability to add home screens. Now, for example, let's say I've got 5 out of the box here, or 5 that I've added, 3 actually come out of the box, including a quick shortcut to Google Now, which serves as one of the home screens, and to my knowledge, you can't get rid of that. Very much like Blink Feed on HTC devices. Obviously, you do have the ability in later versions of Android to get rid of that if you want to, or at least add some different things to Blink Feed. But you can see here, to add a home screen to the Nexus 5, you have to have an application or a widget on an actual home screen. So you can't go through like you can on other Android devices. For example, I have a Note 3 site laying here by my side, so I'll go ahead and go into this and show you what I'm talking about. You can't go and remove, for example, a home screen, and then just go back and randomly add one and play around and change it up. You have to have an application or a widget on that. Now that's pretty intuitive in a lot of ways, but for some people, myself included, I find that to be kind of frustrating because I just want a couple of home screens to have, and I want to center the home screen that I use on a regular basis. I realize that sounds a little bit OCD, but still for a lot of people, for example, I like to have this one centered right here and have 2 home screens on each side. So you don't get the ability to do that here. So I'll go to Dropbox, for example, and swipe it over. Can't scroll between home screens, but when I have an application or a widget, I can do that. So something to keep in mind in terms of overall design and usability. Let's take a look at Chrome here, which comes pre-installed, and we'll take a look at the 4.95-inch display, PhoneDog.com, and you can see here relatively similar version of a keyboard that you saw on Android 4.3 with the ability, to swipe as you would expect. So PhoneDog.com will load it up, and you can see portrait to landscape nice and fast. This device all around is an exceptionally fast smartphone, as you can see, and we can click, for example, up here to activate new tabs, go back, go forward, and more. But again, very fast all around. And that 4.95-inch display, although yes, some of it is taken up by on-screen buttons, you do get a nice viewing experience here and a nice bigger display for content consumption. So be it browsing the web or watching YouTube, you're covered with a decent display. So for a lot of people that think the Note 3, for example, or the One Max way too big, but then think the iPhone 5S is a little bit too small, this could be a nice medium for them, and at the price point, it's really worthy of being looked at anyway. Another cool feature here in the software that I find myself using actually on a pretty regular basis, at least in testing, OK Google. I can say OK Google and activate Google Now. So I can say tell me the weather in Dallas, but I'm going to wait and start that over again. OK Google, weather in Dallas.
It's 59 degrees and partly cloudy in Dallas.
And obviously I use that one quite a bit in video, but it does have far more of an expansive reach all around. You can ask it questions, you can do Google search, and it'll pick it up by voice recognition and move forward from there. Let's take a quick look at quadrant standard just to get it out of the way, because I know that's a question you're probably going to have, particularly in comparison to other high-end devices on the market. So we'll load up quadrant standard. I'll talk briefly about battery life. That is probably the one Achilles heel if you're looking at the Nexus 5. It's got a great processor, it's got an ample amount of memory, it's got nice storage space depending on which one you get. The biggest downside, perhaps the 2,300 milliamp hour battery. Definitely a challenge to make it through a day with anything above heavy, moderate use. You know, you get into heavy use cases where you're traveling and you need your phone. It's definitely a battery on the small side, and it does run down pretty quickly. I found, at least in my testing, that I get anywhere to about 10 to 11 is what I'm seeing for the most part, hours of moderate use. Now, take that with a grain of salt, because you know everybody's use cases differ. I mean, obviously my moderate to heavy is not your moderate to heavy, but still, I do notice this to be less than not only the HTC One, in part because obviously it does have the same size battery, but HTC's done a pretty good job in the software of working with battery management, but also with the Galaxy S4, the Note 3, the Optimus G Pro, and most recently, and perhaps the one that should be compared most directly with the Nexus 5, the LG G2. So keep that in mind. If battery is important to you, it is a non-removable battery. And if battery is important to you, it might be worth looking elsewhere, even though it has an exceptional price. Now, Quadrant Standard's bringing it in at $8,078. Take that very much with a grain of salt, because this thing is fast all around. It's got that nice quad-core Snapdragon 800 CPU, so it's not always indicative, as I always say, of day-to-day performance. I also want to show you the phone area here, because it has changed up. As you can see here, I called Bill Stevenson just as a test yesterday. Obviously, that's me as well. I can click on the picture and get quick access to the number, which is a demo phone number that I had a couple of weeks back or a couple of months back. But the overall look and feel is different here. As you can see, I've got my contacts here, my frequently dialed ones. So Bill and Alexis are my most frequent. I can click all contacts for quick access. I can search contacts in nearby places. And then I've got my recent calls and my dial pad down here. You can see it's different, a look and feel that's very different on the dial pad. And I've got my recent calls right there that pop up in the lower left-hand corner, at least the shortcut rather, pops up in the lower left-hand corner. We'll take a look at camera as well. This thing has an 8-megapixel camera, 1080p HD video recording, optical image stabilization as well. I happen to have the Verizon Note 3 over here, so we'll take a look at that and zoom in. You can see one of the biggest challenges that I hear about the Nexus 5 so far, the zooming takes a little bit of time and snapping the picture takes a little bit of time, and perhaps somebody that's taking pictures of, you know, a football game or of their kids or at a wedding, that's time that's wasted, at least in the zooming process or the focusing process and snapping the actual image. I find that to be relatively fast, and you've got quick and easy access, as you have on previous Android devices or vanilla Android devices, to the gallery from the live camera application itself or from the live view itself. Quick and easy access. I can share from here. I can go in to my settings and take a look, rotate, crop, set pictures as. I can show it on a map, etc. And then from here I can edit also, and I get some nice editing options where I can go into Photos or the photo editor, which comes out of the box, and let's take a look and see what we can do. I've got vintage, for example, black and white, so almost like an Instagram look and feel here to an application, or I should say to some goodies rather, that come out of the box in this device. I can add frames, I can add the film frame, I can add modern frame, got a lot of different options here, and this is all on the device itself. I'm not downloading a third-party application that's here out of the box. So that's a pretty cool little feature. The 8-megapixel camera to me overall takes pretty decent pictures. Optical image stabilization is present here. Go ahead and exit out of that without saving. But again, I find it to be relatively quick. And then down here, you've got, of course, your ability to do a wealth of different shots, panorama. You've got, for example, video, and then you've got the camera, and you can switch to the front-facing camera as well. Flash is up here also. And the ability to go into the settings. Got more options. So again, a settings area very similar to what we saw HDR. One turn HDR on, for example, so you can see what that looks like. The overall look and feel here is pretty similar. A little slower, but hey, take a look at that HDR image, and you can see how the faux leather back there is definitely made out all around on the image itself. So I'm pretty pleased with the camera on it. Again, I think it goes toe-to-toe in a lot of different ways with some of the 8-megapixel shooters. I do find the overall package you get with the Note 3, with the S4, with the HTC One, with the Zoe capabilities to be better. The image quality overall is better. And then you get nice packages there with Zoe, with some of the editing options right out of the gate. But still, again, for the price point, keeping that in mind and keeping that kind of at the front and center, there's a lot to like about the Nexus 5. Let's take a look in settings here, and granted I have downloaded some applications, but a question I've got quite a bit is how much total space is available. I have a few applications downloaded, and I've got about 11 gigabytes available right now out of my 16 gigabytes. So still a pretty reasonable, ample amount of space, even with a few applications installed and rocking and rolling out of the box. So Pretty cool little feature there. Overall, this is a nice device, and Android 4.4, I often talk about a stock Android or vanilla Android rather not being ready for the masses, and obviously it's a combination of two things. One, I still think the value adds you get from Sense, from TouchWiz are better for the mainstream consumer. You get some nice camera value adds, you get some nice software value adds, really worthy to the consumer and even to somebody like me. I use software user interface experiences because I find them to be more beneficial to my day-to-day. That said, there's definitely a use case here for developers, for tech enthusiasts, and even for people that are on a budget, people that are looking for a device that's $350, they want a nice experience. I think there's some great things to like about this device. But if you're looking for an overall software experience and ecosystem, this might not be the unit for you. Combine that obviously with what I just said about the device, and combine that with the fact that even though this thing is coming to retail stores in some manner, Sprint and T-Mobile have announced that it's coming to retail stores in some way and online through their various T-Mobile.com, Sprint.com, etc., there's still kind of a stigma around this, and the fact that, you know what, you can't, Nexus program is very kind of restricted in comparison to the ecosystem, if you will, around the iPhone 5, around Samsung's Galaxy products, around LG stuff, even carrier branded stuff like the G2 to a lesser extent. So there's a combination of things going against this device, in my opinion, that really make it kind of a challenging buy. The software, and then combined with the fact that perhaps there's less of a marketing ecosystem, if you will, around this device. But overall, it's a great buy. I mean, $350 to $400, you can't beat the price point. You get a lot of great things out of the box. I wish there were more value adds in the software, but keeping in mind that those value adds cost you anywhere from $250 to $400 more dollars full retail, it might be worth doing this and just sticking it out. I'll leave that choice up to you. Keep it locked on PhoneDog.com for more. I'm on Twitter at PhoneDog_Aaron. I'm on Facebook at Facebook.com/HiAaronBaker. Let me know what you think of this device. Let me know if you think carrier reps are going to support this device in the store like they do the iPhones and the Galaxy devices and even LG's G2. Will the training be there? Will the planogram space be there? These are probably things only marketing nerds like me think about, but you know what? Let me know anyway on Twitter at PhoneDog_Aaron, Facebook, Facebook.com/HiAaronBaker. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.